Hey everybody, welcome to my Suburban Oasis. My name is Soleil and I garden in a Zone 5B in mid-Michigan, and it's raining out, can you tell? Okay, the drops are so small, it's indetectable. So that's kind of what we've been dealing with here in mid-Michigan. We are still in a drought. I wish I could tell you that we had gotten some fantastic rain, but every time it's even slightly in the forecast, like 70% chance rain today, it just kind of goes around us. I mean, we're surrounded by the Great Lakes and yet we have no water happening. Well, anyhow, I think things in the garden are still hanging in there. We have another chance of rain coming up in a couple of days, so wish us luck. And let's take a garden tour and walk about and look at what's happening in the garden. All right, well, I thought we would start in an area that we don't normally start in today, and I thought we would start near the front porch. It's definitely a little bit gray outside, so not a lot of light, but we have a beautiful growth happening here in our basket underneath of the window. So this window box has really put on some growth. We're starting to see that dichondra actually flow over the sides, and it will be absolutely beautiful when it actually covers up the box completely. Those impatiens might actually take over the boxwoods by the time the summer is over. And you can see I have actually planted a much larger hosta into this container. This I just took out of the garden. It's a wonderful thing to have too many hostas because you can use them for so many different things, and I think it looks absolutely beautiful in this pot. I replaced one of the variegated ones that was in there before. It was just white and green like the ones on the right, but now it is Paul's Glory, and I think it's beautiful. You can see we have some great growth on the impatiens here, and I grabbed some of the Allium caritaviense seed heads and popped them into this little basket right here, and I think they look really pretty too. Super fun. I am definitely enjoying how it looks this year, and I'm glad I used the impatiens. I could use even a lighter color perhaps next year, but I really like the bright pop that this provides, and it goes so well with the rest of the garden. You can see I've used one of the hydrangeas right here up near the front to kind of fill in this area. This is not actually planted, it's still in a pot, and so I am going to plant this out. But I wanted to just kind of fill in that gap right now, and I moved the other pot with the boxwood out because I thought that would look rather pretty after I planted the one in the ground. So we have this beautiful hydrangea right here, which is beginning to bloom. So these are the ones that I got on clearance, you guys. Isn't that gorgeous? That bloom starts out a really beautiful limey green, and it's supposed to turn white and then later a pale pink. So I did move my azalea slightly over to the right to make room for that here. And the reason why I chose this spot is because it's part sun, it faces to the east, and I have ready access to a hose because sometimes I find these hydrangeas in our climate during the summer require a little bit of additional water. So I think it should be a really nice spot for it. I also have a can of spectricide happening here because I ran into some ground bees when I was planting. Luckily, I did not get bitten, or stung, I should say. We have some pretty blush, and these are called blush from the series by Proven Winners, which are the opening act. And these are a type of phlox, and I think they're really beautiful. Just a nice light pink color. Now I did come through and deadhead my spirea back here, the pink sparkler, and it's looking pretty good. It's tolerating the drought pretty well. I did come through and give it a nice water. And I think we're going to get some blooms on our monarda right here. This is the Pardon My Cerise, and behind it we have the June hostas and some really lovely blue hostas. That blue hosta right behind them is actually just a reverted June hosta. It just turned all blue, which is fine with me. It's absolutely beautiful. The hostas have been absolutely amazing throughout this drought. I've only watered this bed one time, and it's been, I want to say, about a good 6 weeks since we've had a really thorough rain, so that's pretty outstanding. Also, the same can be said for the hellebores that are in here. I definitely have seen some of them kind of splay open where You know, the middle of them you can kind of see because they have drooped. So I've come through and watered them and they perked right up pretty darn quick. So super beautiful. All right, let's take a look at some of the sun gardens that we have out front here. So this sun garden is on the east side of the house as you come out from the back garden, and you can see we have some nice boxwoods and we have our burning bush, and I did my cutback and trimming, and the snowball viburnum and the royal ferns are just ginormous. But you can see right now we have this liatris hedge, which is definitely getting much bigger, and the buds are forming much taller, and it's probably going to bloom within the next week. Also, one of the things that's doing really well over here is the PG hydrangea standard. So this is looking great. The buds are getting ready to open soon. And over here between us and the neighbor's house, we have a really nice long border that follows the entire length of the driveway. And although the crab apple is done blooming, it definitely provides some really nice height in this area and allows for a little bit of shade for some of the plants in here. But I think it's looking really good still. I have definitely come through and provided some water. Surprisingly enough, it is definitely before July 4th, and we're getting some blooms, or some buds, excuse me, for blooms on these mums. We have some pretty extensive buds all over the cone flowers in these garden beds, and you'll even see we have a few of them opening up. This here is the beautiful bunny-tails grass, and you can see at the base of it we have that gorgeous giant dianthus flower. I would say that one is probably about 2 inches across. I'm really looking forward to actually having those planted in the ground at the end of the gardening season. And you can see the nice pop of color back there with the lobelia and the osteospermum, which is kind of closed right now, but it's a beautiful deep dark purple. I have not cut back this salvia yet. This is the Caradonna salvia, and it's really beautiful, but you can see the bees continue to enjoy it despite the fact that most of the blooms are gone. They really find every single last blossom to extract the nectar from. So super fantastic for them. And here's our other pot over here. Again, just looking really nice. All that lobelia is stuff that I grew from seed, and you'll see that throughout my pots in the garden. I also grew this bunny-tail grass from seed, and I think it's actually going to seed right now. You can see it kind of shedding. Further down, the rest of the garden beds are still looking pretty healthy. I definitely see some signs of stress on the plants, but I've been really impressed by how well some of the things have been doing. And I think part of that is just due to the fact that I really am quite choosy in the selections that I plant in my garden. I try not to have something that's considered high maintenance. I'm not going to lie, I come out here and I have watered. I have used my sprinkler. Here we have some Concord barberries, and I got a question after one of my recent videos about the invasiveness of barberry, and yes, many of the varieties of barberry can be invasive in many parts of the country, so do be careful before you purchase any of them. Please do your research and make sure that when you're planting something that it is considered a sterile variety. So I definitely try to do that myself. I think this garden bed is looking rather lovely. We're still getting a few blooms on the elderberry here, but they're definitely going over. And I did do a little bit of pruning on it in that small tree form. And every year it will change just slightly. The juniper has put on so much growth this year. It is fantastic to see. It's really filling in. I do need to prune the viburnums on either side though. Those are the blue muffin viburnums. And they're getting a little bit wide, so I want to start to trim them up a little bit from the bottom in terms of creating them a little more as a small tree form, but just a tall shrub form. They won't be a really true tree form. You can see the spirea we just planted is doing really well. In fact, it's starting to put on some beautiful little pink blooms. This one is the Sundrop spirea, and behind it we have, I think it's the lemon jade sedum, so that should be beautiful. Something did come through, I think it probably was the deer, and ate off the buds of these purple cone flowers, so I'm definitely going to need to come through and do some more spraying. Every once in a while they do get ahead of me, but here you can see we actually have some in bloom. Can you believe it? This is a woolly speedwell, and I think it's absolutely gorgeous, so I wanted to show you it in bloom. It has these beautiful light lavender purple colored blooms. It's very short, about 12 inches tall, and it has this gorgeous silvery foliage, which typically means that things are fairly drought tolerant. And so I really like this one, and I think it would be a nice ground cover or something for the front of the border, and that's what we're using it for here. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it grows over time. You can see we trim back the mums here as well. So just trying to make sure that we keep a nice compact form and that we get lots of blooms. Here we are now at the mailbox garden bed, and this is just the back side of the mailboxes, and we have a beautiful clematis, and we have some wonderful cone flowers. You would think the deer would have snipped the buds off of these first, but they didn't. And then we also have buds on the garden mums that are in here, and these are a perennial. Many mums are perennial. It's just really important that you plant them very early on. So when they first show up in the garden centers in the fall, get them right in the ground if you want them to grow on and continue as a perennial. Otherwise, they may not root in successfully for you. All right, let's move on to the other sun garden. Well, I'm really excited to show you the sun garden this week because the dianthus continue to be in full bloom. And we still have some blooms on many of the salvia, but you'll see we're also starting to get some buds on the bobo hydrangeas, which is thrilling. Again, that just means I really do need to come out here with some of my liquid fence and my backpack sprayer and get after that. It's really not such a hard job. Once you get used to it, you just have to remember to do it on a fairly regular basis. We have a black prince snapdragon back here that came back from last year. Isn't that beautiful? Oh, I actually do see that they did nip some buds off of this bobo. Yeah, definitely time to come through with some of the liquid fence. But I think overall it's looking quite beautiful, isn't it? All of the different shades of pink to kind of an orangey red are looking really nice together. You know, I really enjoy some of the art that's done by some of the folks who are impressionists and those who have done pointillism, like Seurat and Monet. And as you look at the colors that they have in some of their paintings, they're really beautiful, and they just meld certain colors that are within the same color family, and I use that within my garden design. Well, we have one lone beautiful bloom here on this pink scabiosa, but there's definitely more coming, and I'm sure if we ever get rain, it will really benefit them. I'm also waiting to see the blooms on these gorgeous goldfinch daisies. These are Shasta daisies, and they are a beautiful yellow color. I can't wait to show you them when they come in bloom, but you can see that the buds are just getting ready to come out. Now, I did come through and really trim back a lot of the mums, so it does look a bit empty in this garden bed right now, but it won't take long until they start to come back. It certainly would be faster if we had rain. There's a little bit of a recurring theme to some of my comments, and I apologize for that, but it's what's happening in the garden here. Look at these beautiful blooms that are starting to happen on the oak leaf hydrangea. This is the jet stream hydrangea, and it's an amazing one for 4-season interest. I just love it, and this is the most I have ever seen in terms of the blooms on it. Here's a gorgeous large one. So as we look down a little bit lower, you can remember we cut back these veronica super hard, and I just want to give you a close-up so hopefully you can see how the new growth is actually already starting right around where we cut off. So we have two different stems that are beginning to bud up around the side of the stem that was cut off. Oh, would you look at that? We have a wiffle ball flower back there. Look at that. I wonder who planted that. All right, we have some gorgeous penstemon right here. These are so cute. These are the Pike's Peak Purple, and they bloom really quite prolifically, so I definitely enjoy those and have divided those throughout the garden. Well, guys, this new garden bed is still empty, and I'm quite proud of myself at keeping it empty so far. I think I'm doing a pretty good job despite Chad trying to get me to buy things. So one of the things that is kind of a challenge for this right now is, again, that lack of rain, because it doesn't help with things breaking down and composting naturally. So we'll see how that goes. I still think it'll be plenty ready by the end of summer for some planting this fall. Now, I did come through with these Paint the Town magenta, and I trimmed all of the dead heads off of them. So you'll see there are still some stems that are there, but I cut all of the seed heads off of them, and that will hopefully continue to encourage them to bloom and just keep on producing flowers. Now, as we head towards the back garden, you'll notice that the grass is starting to go dormant because it is so dry here. And that's okay, it will come back. We are not watering it here. My husband definitely has wanted to do that, but I have encouraged him not to, because the grass will come back as it always does. It simply will, like I said, go dormant, and then it will come back as soon as the rain picks up. So yeah, it's definitely not as beautiful as it normally would be. And in fact, we have stopped cutting it because we have fire watches and things like that. You wouldn't want the heat from the bottom of your lawnmower to start a fire, because it's practically like hay right now, or straw, in terms of the dryness. Now, the low-growth sumac that is in this area is looking really nice and healthy. It does incredibly well during drought. I do need to come through probably at some point soon and do a little bit of pruning on it, just to help thicken it up, as well as trim it back so that it's not coming over this barberry, giving that barberry its space. And yeah, also it seems to be kind of creeping towards this viburnum that we planted. Now, this viburnum is going to get much taller, so this is probably about the top height for this low grow sumac. It's called low grow because it only gets a couple of feet high. Sometimes I do think that things have a tendency to get larger than the size that is listed on their tag in my garden, so we'll see how that goes. But I definitely can trim it back. It responds really well to pruning. I've seen it on the Michigan State University campus where they have it planted, and they trim it back every year, and they use it in the median there in the roads, and so I can tell that it's incredibly hardy and tough plant. Check this out, you guys. We have some blooms happening on the Verbena bernariensis here, and it is just floating right up above this beautiful variegated sage. Isn't that gorgeous? Now, this sage, if you grow it, it can stay as a perennial. I believe it's hardy down to zone 5, so it may winter over in this spot. It's a little raised up out of the ground, so maybe not, but I'm just going to leave it here and see what it does over the winter, because if it comes back, it will continue to grow larger and we'll actually get some beautiful purple blooms. Now, you can see the drumstick alliums are just getting ready to open now. They were barely beginning to show their buds last week, and now they are so close to bloom. This garden bed is looking good, but I have not gotten to the boxwood pruning yet. You can see they're looking a little bit straggly, not too bad. They maintain their shape quite well. Those are the Green Mountain variety. That's the variety that I prefer. It grows quite well in our climate, and it definitely looks beautiful after trimming back. Now you can see this geranium is leaping right out into the grass, and that's just its kind of growth pattern. This is the Johnson's Blue variety, and you'll see this also throughout the garden. So it's just about time for me to cut it back, and when I do, I literally will go right back past the flowers and cut it back to the base back here, and then it will flush back out with some new growth and some new blooms. Not quite as prolific as this, but it will still continue to bloom, so that's wonderful. All right, let's check out the back garden. Here we are at the potager. We have some gorgeous sedum. Sedums do just fine during drought, and they really don't require much water at all. In fact, the sedum and the salvia are probably the most wonderful plants that I have right now for drought. The alliums are looking gorgeous. These are just our regular old onions, the candy variety, and I left them over winter, and now they're getting ready to bloom, or they are already in bloom. I've harvested some sweet peas, and that has been fantastic. I was able to share some with my son, who loves them as well. The roses are starting to go over here, and I have to say that these planters, while they looked good at first, have become quite the water hogs. I found out that this bunny-tailed grass really is not meant for drought. It really sucks up the water quite quickly. So it is beautiful, but definitely make sure if you plant it that you have a hose nearby or access to water. The lobelia in this area of the garden is looking absolutely stunning in these pots, isn't it? I love the color that it provides. It's just a soothing tone of blue. Now I do need to come through in some of the planters and pull out the pansies and any of the, kind of spring type flowers, because it's become much too hot for them. These geraniums were not doing well, and I found that they were in one of those little peat pots that that encircle the roots. It's kind of a plug type thing. Once I pulled them off, they have started doing better. So just beware of that. I found over the last few years, more and more growers seem to be using them, and it's kind of unfortunate because they don't do well with the plants. These are the Potomac Orange snapdragons. They're about 2.5 feet tall and looking rather stunning. They are all starting to open up. I think the blooms are going to look amazing when they are all opening. And you can see we have lots of blooms in the containers up here on the deck as well. Well, I have gotten some strawberries out of the strawberry garden. I continue to water those because they definitely need it. And an update on those snapdragons that we planted in the ground. I'm already seeing new growth on them since we got them into the ground. I think they are super happy to be out of those tiny little pots we had them in. Over here in the lady garden, we'll start over here at the pink mint clematis, because the pink mint clematis is just starting to bloom. You can see the buds have their little pointy ends on them, and they are starting to open. So this is just smothered in all sorts of buds, and it's going to be gorgeous. I did actually water this plant today in the hopes that the blooms would last more than a week. The catmint is kind of going over. It's probably time for me to cut that back. When I do that, I will just cut it right down to pretty much the base and let it grow back, because it is incredibly tough plant. And yeah, that's just how it responds really well to that type of treatment in my garden. The foxgloves look really pretty in this garden. They're just the right height. We have some others in the garden that are much taller and are going through their bloom cycle rather quickly, but they are beautiful. So here we have the mixture of the opening act phlox with the dianthus, and this is the pinkadot phlox. And we're starting to get some tiny blooms, which is what the shrub does right here. This is a candy coral berry, and it has little tiny pink flowers on it, and the pollinators love it. And after they're pollinated, they will create a beautiful light pink berry that's pretty much the color of the blush opening act phlox here. Simply beautiful. And we have a similar look on the other side of the garden shed, but we also have that boom chocolate geranium, and it is really prolific. I'm just loving that. All right, let us take a look at the half moon garden. As we spin around here, we will see what we have in bloom, and we'll take a look at the back side and then come through the front as well. This is going to be a long video, you guys. I hope you are looking forward to a full garden tour, but there's so much going on. So we have this beautiful pot, really, that is just growing incredibly well. The elephant ears are big. Our geraniums are getting much bigger. Our impatiens is getting bigger. That's just looking great. And we have a matching pot on the other side that is fantastic. So as we come around the back side, we have the Wizard of Oz Veronica, and that is starting to put on its color. And I did divide this last year, so I'm really thrilled about the fact that we have more of it than we had last year, because I do feel like this is one of those kind of plants that you need multiples of in order to really get an impact from the color. And the penstemon that we planted, that was on clearance, I cut it back, and you can see we have some buds happening on it, which means we're going to get some more blooms. So really thrilled about that as well. So far we haven't lost the blueberries on our blueberry bushes that are in the little bags. Hopefully we'll be able to get a taste of them. Well, we definitely have some really good looking privet. It is beginning to bloom, and I'm looking forward to that scent because they do smell so good when they bloom, you guys. And here you can see on these we have more blooms happening. And again, I think this is the pristine lilac variety. I haven't cut back the lady's mantle yet because it still looks really nice and lush. So I'm keeping it until it tells me that it's time to cut it back. And here we have the other planter that matches the other side of the pool. But this one actually does have some buds and blooms on the geranium. This one gets slightly more shade because of the tree that it's near. So I think it gives it a little bit of a rest period. We have some ultra pink phlox and the beautiful high voltage rose. And I think that the Tian Shan shrubs are looking amazing right now with the hibiscus, don't you? And just look at this rose. Now again, this side gets a little bit more sun, so we have more blooms on this side. This is the high voltage rose. I really have found that the Easy Elegance series of roses is definitely what it claims to be, which is easy and elegant. I definitely enjoy them a lot. We have some white wands Veronicas also at the base here that are beginning to bloom. So fun. I just transplanted those this year. They probably would be bigger if we had gotten rain, but definitely missing that, right? So I've also had all of these sticks in my fire pit for a very long time because we can't burn anything at this point. All right, well, over here, as we begin to creep towards the woodland garden, we have beautiful blooms starting on this hydrangea. And I am really pleased with the way that the supports are working on this. It was a support that I got from Gardener Supply Company, and really it just grew straight up and through it. Now, who knows, because we haven't gotten any rain to like beat it down or anything, but right now it's really looking fantastic. I am seeing lots of buds still on that pink diamond hydrangea standard. This is the first year it's in our garden. We planted that last fall, so I'm really excited to see how it performs here. And then we have another hydrangea that I just planted right here in this garden bed between the two hanging baskets. And I'm really happy with how the hanging baskets are looking so far this year. They are starting to show some really good color. And this garden path is always just so peaceful. I enjoy coming out here and just wandering the path and looking to see what's happening in the garden. We have one of our butterfly blue scabiosa that's taken a hit. I don't know what happened. It may be that a chipmunk has made a tunnel underneath of it, and they are definitely making them everywhere within the garden right now. So I wouldn't put it past as that being the culprit for its demise. But I'm not worried. They definitely create additional seedlings very regularly, and so they also divide well. And you can see just how prolific they are in this garden bed. They really are incredible at just continuous blooms. And this gorgeous phlox is the cloudburst variety. And we have some blooms that are starting to happen on this powwow white echinacea, despite the groundhog eating half of it off earlier this year. We have more blooms also happening on this jet stream hydrangea. I'm definitely smitten with the jet stream hydrangea. It has been an excellent addition to the garden. All of the hostas are doing really well. They definitely are a very drought tolerant lot. I'm still not really seeing any blooms starting to set or buds starting to set on the Pinky Winky, but I expect it to be soon. I think the hostas definitely make everything just look a bit lush, despite the fact that we haven't had any rain. They really just provide that background of greenery that you otherwise might not get if you didn't have them or if you were relying on something else. Here we have another beautiful jet stream hydrangea. Aren't they gorgeous? This one is in deeper shade over here, so it's not as far along. It has really giant leaves on it though, similar to how big the leaves on the hostas get. I really do enjoy the shade garden a lot during the summer. It's so nice to work in because, you know, it's not as hot as the rest of the garden. We're starting to get some really good buds on the Annabelle hydrangea back here. And our phlox, these are the ultra pink phlox as well, and they are looking gorgeous. They provide a nice pop of color, don't they? Let's just turn around by the pool and take a look at our dahlias because we have a few of those as well. And I have spun these pots around so that each side can continue to get full sun. Right now, this side facing us is south. So this will help to fill out the blooms on both sides of the pot if I continue to rotate them every couple of weeks. But you can see they're really starting to open. We have some beautiful verbena down at the bottom and then some gorgeous blooms. Now, I don't know what these are because they are not what I ordered. They are just my favorites of what actually came when I ordered them, and I separated them from the ones that I was not as fond of so that I could plant these up in the container. Now you'll notice we have lots of aphids. I've seen lots of aphids around the garden this year. I haven't been worried about them. They haven't done any real severe damage. I think we're doing just fine still, so just not worried about it. But yeah, those are going to be like next week. I think we're going to have blooms all over them. And they are great. They do really well for me in pots, a lot better than they did for me when I had them simply in the ground. So I think I will continue to repeat that in the future because They just stand upright so much better. Our banana cream 2 are starting to get ready to open over here. So soon we'll see a nice light bloom in this garden that will kind of light up in this part shade area. But we continue to have lots of color in the shade beds back here. And again, you can see just how wonderful the hostas do despite the lack of rain. Isn't it amazing? They are so resilient. And the heucheras that are in here as well. Some of the curly fries hostas that are right up in front are starting to fill out more. I divided these very significantly last year, so they were very small divisions, and I'm really happy with how well they are filling out. The apples are doing great. I have come through and given some water to the apple tree because I'm very concerned about whether or not the fruit will remain on the tree or if it will go bad or drop or anything like that. Now this garden bed right here definitely is getting towards the end of its cycle. I think I might have said that last week, but it's really clear this week. It still looks pretty, but I can tell that it is really tired. So the catch fly is going to be the first one that I cut back, which is this variegated variety right here. So I will just come through and cut back each of those stems really well. I am starting to see some buds on this firelight hydrangea. Super excited about that. That was gorgeous last year. Now over here we have quite a bit of green, but I do see that we're starting to get some stems with buds on some of the daylilies in here. And I'm excited about that because they are really beautiful blooms. And the more that they continue to spread, the more blooms we will get. And they will definitely continue to fill out. This is their second full year, and I divided them also pretty well last year to continue to ensure that I had lots of them. I really think their foliage is quite amazing. It's incredibly strong, and I don't know how to describe it, but a lot of daylilies have really thin leaves, and these are not like that at all. So I can tell that they're very robust. We have some blooms on our Midnight Masquerade, not as many as I would like to see, but again, I think that's just due to the lack of rain. Now we're coming into the area where we have lots of blooms. The daisies simply light this area up along with this beautiful white rose over here. And we're starting to get some blooms on the Roseanne geranium behind it. I did take the hanging basket down from here because it was kind of keeping this barberry from growing upright. It was growing more forward, so I wanted to make sure there wasn't any impediment to it growing upwards because I do want it to, you know, get some height and verticality to help kind of cover up that fence because, you know, that's kind of my goal. I don't really want to see a whole lot of fence. I'd rather see the plants. Aren't these daisies beautiful? These are called Sweet Daisy Birdie Daisy. And yes, I did say daisy twice. But just look at the center of the bloom. Aren't those gorgeous? It's almost like there's itty bitty tiny blooms next to that yellow center. So cool. The quickfire hydrangea has buds on it. This rose is beautiful. This is the Eden Climber rose. I have really enjoyed it. I think it would have lasted longer if we had more water, but I'm going to come through and cut some of the blooms that are a little further along off this weekend, and hopefully we'll continue to get some blooms on it if we get some actual real rain. I'm not going to fertilize it or anything like that because I don't want to stress it out and try to push it too far. Now last year, our blooms on this Edinburgh clematis were much bigger and much more prolific. Again, I think it's a lack of water. The clematis really do like it. So this is the Sundrop Spirea, similar to the one that we have in the front garden. So you can see what it looks like after a couple of years of being in the garden. It's not super big, but it is super cute and it provides a really nice pop of color. Now I did come through and cut the salvia back that was around these two barberries. You'll see that's missing this week, but hopefully those will grow back. They typically do and provide us with a second flush of blooms. And they just weren't looking that great. They were really overgrown, so I thought I'd cut them all the way back to the base. Now over here, you can see our double plate doozy spirea. And I'm thinking soon, hopefully, I'll do a video where I take out this arborvitae bush and kind of move this spirea over to the middle between the viburnum and the other arborvitae, so it has a little bit more space because it's really, really beautiful and I enjoy the blooms on it. It's a gorgeous color, and this circular arborvitae has just gotten a little too big for its britches and is not looking that great to me. So I just like to make changes in the garden when I can. Now you see the bright, bright blooms on this sedum. This is that blue spruce sedum that creeps along the rocks. And once it goes over, I will eventually just cut it back and it will be another ground cover sedum again. But yeah, it comes up about 10 to 12 inches and it's a very bright pop of color for a short period of time. And then it just goes back to being a ground cover. Our strawberry sundae here is doing really great and it's putting on lots of buds. And you can see behind it, we have a rose, and that rose is really, really pretty. I normally don't do red, but it was supposed to be a pink Grace and Grit bicolor rose, but it is actually a red rose and it's doing so well in my garden. I just don't have the heart to take it out. And it really does look quite pretty next to this clematis, doesn't it? I mean, that deep red with the deep purple. I love it. We are still not having blooms on the can-do hydrangea. I'm just waiting for them to come out. Again, this is its first full year in the garden. We planted it last year. I'm just happy that it actually has buds on it and that it's actually going to bloom, because that means it's a keeper for me. And I can see they're starting to form a little bit of color on the buds, which means they're getting much closer to opening. And at this point, you know what I'm going to say, which is that it probably will bloom if it actually rains. We just got a shot of growth on this weigela back here. You see this nice new stem that has perked up, so that's going to give it a little bit more height already. I am just so impressed with that Sonic Bloom weigela. I mean, it's tiny and it has blooms all over it. You don't see that with shrubs very often. If you ever want to reduce some of the time in your garden, use shrubs. They are much less in terms of having to take care of them and cutting them back or deadheading them. This is a quick fire hydrangea. I'm sure you're seeing all of the gorgeous buds on it. And look at that beautiful lobelia, you guys. We're starting to get some blooms on the geranium. The geranium and the lobelia were grown straight from seed. So I'm happy with how the hanging baskets have turned out this year. This is a superstar spirea, and we have some sweet romance lavender getting ready to bloom down here. And all of the millennial alliums are definitely putting their buds on, so you can see those starting to come up. And things are looking nice in this corner as well. Definitely could use rain. But this clematis is still just going strong. Very steady, lots of blooms. So you'll see some piles around. Those are just me coming through and deadheading, cutting back some things. It's that time of year where lots of deadheading is important. And I have some Miskim lilacs in here at the base of the strawberry sundae hydrangea. I actually think I'm probably going to take them out. I'm thinking about planting something else at their base or just taking them out altogether. It depends on how much of a tree form I decide to do on this hydrangea. This is the berry white hydrangea, and it's really putting on some great height this year, which makes me super happy because I just love when it kind of covers up that brick wall and takes away the starkness of it. And it has gorgeous blooms, you guys, gorgeous. We're getting towards the end of our blooms on the mock orange. But you can see we got some more blooms on the clematis. I believe that's the Dr. Rupel, which is the pink, and then the multi-blue, which looks purple. And then, oops, I'm running into a rock behind me. I'm trying to back up to get you guys a really good view of this because it's such a nice combination of color with the rose and the spirea, the clematis, and that mock orange. Really, really pretty. And you can see we have more of that all the rage rose right here. It's a really nice open habit, so the pollinators do just absolutely love it. And it just looks like a beach sunset to me. So pretty. I did have to cut back some of the foxglove in this garden bed. It just was not looking good. It was looking messy, kind of dead. The drought just hasn't done it any favors. Now, something that I do need to come through and do is clean up these containers. I need to get rid of the pansies. Kind of like I was talking about earlier. We have some early spring flowers in here we need to get rid of. I'm going to leave the white gila for now. I may plant that out this fall, but we'll see. So I also have a beautiful juniper right here. That is a nice ground cover juniper. And then along the back here we have some gorgeous sedums and hens and chicks that we grow right along this wall that faces south. Rock walls are a great place to grow things like thyme and sedum and hens and chicks because they have wonderful drainage and they create a lot of heat. Some of my favorites along here are from the Monrovia, I think it's the Monrovia series that are called Sun Sparkler. So there's a Sun Sparkler series and they have wonderful colors and wonderful blooms and they're just gorgeous. So check those out. Give it a good Google on the Sun Sparkler series of sedum. We got lots of blooms over here, you guys. These incredible hydrangeas are just now starting to open up. I gave them a little bit of water yesterday, and man, did that kind of send them over the edge into bloom. I'm so excited, and with that Johnson's Blue geranium peeking through, isn't that gorgeous? Just so lovely. And we have the phlox over here with the ultra pink and the pinkadot. So many beautiful things to look at. And again, we have that Pikes Peak purple penstemon. That is a little bit of a tongue twister there. I did plant a very small incredible hydrangea right in this area where there's a gap. It did not do well because of the drought. It was too small and just didn't have a good enough established root system. So I don't know whether I will plant another one yet or not. I might just chop a little piece off of one of these and kind of transplant it this fall. We will see. I'm definitely already starting to get new buds on this salvia. And so it's going to put out some nice fresh blooms for me. Again, not as good as the first time, but definitely plenty of new buds on it. So I'm looking forward to that. And finally, we have this planter that has some neon sedum in it, as well as that alyssum that we grew from seed, and the bunny-tailed grass poking out to the side. The ranunculus has gone over at this point, but we also have the little hottie hydrangea back behind it. This little hottie hydrangea I got on clearance at the end of last year. It looks really great, and I'm excited to see what it will do this year. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this garden tour. I hope it wasn't too long for you. I just wanted to give you a view of everything that's going on right now. There's just so much happening in the garden, even though we haven't gotten any rain. So thanks for joining me today, and I hope we'll see you next time.